Today in our 2016 Jeep Grand Cherokee, we'll be having a look at and showing you how to install the SMI Stay-In-Play DUO supplemental braking system, part number SM99251, in conjunction with the Roadmaster stoplight switch kit, part number RM-751449. The Stay-In-Play DUO is a perfect solution when it comes time to needing a supplemental braking system for your flat towing setup. Here's what the Stay-In-Play DUO looks like installed. Now, the reason you're going to want a supplemental braking system, in many places it is required by law to have a supplemental braking system when you're flat towing your vehicle. Now, the reason you'd want the Stay-In-Play DUO over other options out there is because this is a permanently installed fixture in your vehicle. There is no setup every time you want to flat tow. You simply flip one switch every time you want to tow and you're good to go. Inside of our vehicle, you'll find our cylinder, which is permanently attached to our brake pedal. We still have plenty of foot room around it to operate our brakes normally when we're driving, but when we're flat towing, the cylinder will pull down on our pedal and apply the brakes in our vehicle. This being permanently attached, many of our customers have found this much easier to use and operate than a cumbersome portable braking system, which they have to set up and remove every time they want to flat tow or drive their vehicle once they arrive at their destination. Now, what's great about this braking system compared to other units like it, such as the Roadmaster Invisibrake system, this is a proportional unit. By being proportional, what that means is that as our RV slows down slowly, the brakes will be applied a matching amount inside of our Grand Cherokee, so it slows down slowly as well. If we have more brake pressure and we're slowing down faster in the motorhome, the same thing will happen in our Grand Cherokee. This will bring us to smooth and safe stops every time. Also, when comparing the Stay-In-Play to the Invisibrake, this is a much more versatile unit. Because the Invisibrake's box has to be mounted inside the passenger compartment of the vehicle, you are limited in places you can put it. But with the Stay-In-Play, you can mount it underneath the hood, such as we have done here. So what you'll do is you'll have your umbilical cord hooked up to your motorhome and your Grand Cherokee. You'll have an assistant apply the brakes in the motorhome, and we'll turn our unit on. And we'll take our adjustment knob here, loosen it, and slide it down to more sensitive. Once the brakes start to apply, we'll slide the knob up. They may start to chatter. Once they stop chattering, you'll go up 1/8 of an inch more and tighten the knob down. And that's it. That's your setup. Once you have the knob adjusted, you don't ever have to worry about it again. We also have an indicator light, which will alert us that the brakes are being applied in our Grand Cherokee via our motorhome's rear view monitor system. We also have a breakaway switch, and if this pin were to get pulled in the unlikely event of our vehicle becoming disconnected from our motorhome, the brakes will be applied in our Grand Cherokee, bringing it to a stop. For this particular flat tow setup, we used a Roadmaster EZ4 base plate kit, a Roadmaster Sterling all-terrain tow bar, Roadmaster universal high-powered diode wiring kit, and a Roadmaster stoplight switch. Depending on your application, you may need to purchase a high-low adapter to maintain a level tow bar. Now that we've gone over some features, we'll show you how we got it installed. The first thing we need to do is find a place to mount our operating unit. Our options are fairly limited on the Jeep Grand Cherokee. So what I did is I mounted it in front of our engine to our core support using 2 self-tapping screws. We still have plenty of clearance between the box and the engine. It's resting on our fan shroud, and I used a zip tie to secure the bottom of it to the fan shroud just so it doesn't rattle around. This gives it a nice and solid mount. The next thing you want to do is find a place to mount your G-Force controller unit. We have ours mounted on the driver's side of our vehicle on the kick panel just underneath our parking brake lever. Now, our parking brake still has plenty of clearance, so we can still use it properly without contacting the G-Force controller. When you're mounting this, you want to make sure it's facing in a forward direction like we have it here. Otherwise, it won't work properly. This is about the best spot in the vehicle for this, which is why I put it here. Keeps it away from our passengers' knees or feet as they're riding in the vehicle, and it's away from our feet as we're driving as well. Now the wires for our G-force controller go through our firewall right behind our brake pedal. We just poked a hole in this grommet with a screwdriver and used a pull wire to pull them through. Here's where the wires for the G-force controller come up out of the firewall, right by our master cylinder. We routed them through this hole here for a wiring harness, and then alongside the airbox into our engine compartment over here, and this is where our connections start to be made. Next, we need to mount our cylinder. Our cylinder can only go in one spot. It has to attach to our brake pedal. I put ours right here where the brake pedal starts to change its angle of bend. This gave it a great shot towards the firewall with the anchor point. You'll have to cut out some insulation around the firewall in order to get the anchor point in place. Where our self-tapping screw goes into the firewall, there's actually a round divot right in the middle of the firewall, so it gives you a perfect spot to aim for. When mounting the cylinder, you want to ensure that the cable leaves the cylinder as straight as possible. And when the pedal's depressed and the cylinder retracts, you want to also make sure that the cable's pulling as straight as possible. This will put less stress on it and will ensure that it won't break over the course of time. You want to have about a ½ inch of slack in the cable as well, which is what we have right here. Next, we need to find a place for our indicator light. Your indicator light is what's going to allow you to know that your brakes are being applied in your Grand Cherokee. You want to place this in an area where you can easily see it in your motorhome's rear view camera system if it's so equipped. In our case, we put ours on the plastic housing that our rear view mirror attaches to, making sure we didn't block any of the sensors for the auto dimming mirror or the camera system that the vehicle has. We routed the wire through the housing, goes into the headliner, across, down our A-pillar, making sure we zip tied it out of the way of our side curtain airbag so we don't have to worry about it coming out if the airbag is ever deployed. Once it goes down past the A-pillar, it goes down behind our dash, and the wires came down in this general area here. Now, the last critical piece of our puzzle of components that we have is our breakaway switch. We have this mounted to our base plate using the hardware that came with the breakaway switch. You typically want to install this when you're installing your base plate while you have the fascia off. It is a lot easier, and you can route the wiring much easier then. Now that you have all of your components mounted, you need to start making your electrical connections. We'll show you how to do one here, and then we'll go over the rest of them. This is the blue wire from our operating unit. This is the blue wire from our breakaway switch. We need to connect these two together. In order to do that, we'll measure off how much of each wire we'll need, cut off the excess, strip back the insulation on both. Now our kit comes with standard butt connectors. For every butt connection that I'm making, I'll be using heat shrink butt connectors if these connections are outside of the interior of the vehicle. This will better protect them from the elements. These are 14 to 16 gauge butt connectors. We have these on our website. So we'll place the butt connector over the stripped wire, we'll crimp it, take the other wire, place that in the other end of the butt connector, and we'll crimp that. And here's what a proper butt connection looks like crimped down. Now we'll use a heat gun to shrink down the butt connector. You'll want to use a heat gun because it provides a source of indirect heat versus a direct flame like a lighter, which will damage the butt connector. We do have these on our website. And here's what it looks like shrunk down. We then repeated this for the rest of our connections, which we'll show you now. With the blue wire from the breakaway switch connected to the blue wire from the operating unit, that leaves us with the orange and black wire from the breakaway switch. That ties in to the brown wire off the operating unit. Now these two wires need to also have power supplied to them. So the leftover excess brown wire from the operating unit, we tied in on one side of our butt connector, and we brought that wire underneath our operating unit, zip tied to our coolant reservoir here, zip tied to a wiring harness inside the engine compartment. Comes over here. And then we have it attached to our fuse holder, and that then is attached to the jump start post on our vehicle using a ring terminal. This will supply it directly with 12-volt power from our battery. The black wire from our operating unit is attached to the black wire from our G-force controller. The green wire from our G-force controller, we tie that into our vehicle's existing 4-pole flat towed vehicle lighting system wiring. Same with the yellow wire. So the yellow wire will go to the yellow wire, the green wire will go to the green wire. The white wire is the ground. We tie that in with the ground on our 4-pole flat wiring, and also made an additional ground lead, which then goes to an additional ground point on our chassis to provide an additional ground for our operating unit. Inside our vehicle, under the dash on the driver's side, where we mounted our G-force controller, we have a few electrical connections in here. The black wire from an indicator light, we tied that in with the black wire that comes off of our G-force controller. The red wire for our indicator light, this needs to go to a stoplight switch. Right here's the stoplight switch that we installed when we installed our braking system. Because this vehicle's factory stoplight switch does not work when the vehicle's in tow mode, we needed the additional switch. It attached to our factory stoplight switch bracket using a nut and bolt. Then the switch screws into this bracket here that we added. And the two wires coming off this switch, one of them goes to the red wire for our indicator light. The other wire goes through our vehicle's firewall in the same manner that our other wires for the G-force controller did, and then is attached to our vehicle's jump start post using a fuse holder. This will provide power for the indicator light so that when the brake pedal is depressed, the indicator light will illuminate. Here's another angle of our stoplight switch. You can see the back side of it with the wires coming out. Okay, this green wire here, this is the wire that attached to one side of our stoplight switch. We routed this underneath the windshield cowl, and it does get extended with the other red wire which comes with the stoplight switch kit. And here's where the red wire that we extended with the stoplight switch kit wire comes. Then we have it attached to the fuse holder, then to our jump start post, just like we did with the fuse holder for the operating unit itself. Now that we've gone over all of our electrical connections, we'll go over our plumbing for our air lines and our vacuum lines. On our cylinder, we have a piece of airline tubing which plugs into this fitting, and then it goes out our firewall the same exact path as all of our wires did going through the firewall. Now here's the other end of our airline tubing. This will plug into our operating unit. We'll show you how that works now. We'll take the hose and it'll just push into this fitting right here. You push it in all the way until it stops. And then you'll pull back and make sure it's secure. Now we need to tie into our vehicle's vacuum line systems for the brake booster. We'll do that by taking our provided hose here, and we'll plug this onto the check valve that's pre-installed on the operating unit. We routed that vacuum line underneath our elbow for our air box, where it ends up next to this factory vacuum line right here in front of our strut tower. This vacuum line is the one we need to tie into because this goes to our brake booster. So we'll go ahead and cut this right here. And in this location, we'll install a check valve. The black side will point towards our engine. We'll just push this into place, and we'll reinstall the hose that we just cut on the other end. We'll make one additional cut a couple inches away. Remove this sleeve here, and this section here will slide back, and we'll cut this off with a pair of scissors to give us a nice clean look. Here's what it looks like taped up. This will just prevent it from fraying. Now we'll take our T-fitting and we'll install this onto the factory hose. You may need to twist it a little bit in order to get it in fully. You can also use some lubricant if you have any. Just use something that's silicone based. Apply the other end to the factory hose. Now, we'll measure off how much of the line that we have going to our operating unit that we're going to need. We'll cut off the excess, and we'll attach that to the T part of our fitting. And that completes all of our vacuum connections. Now that everything's installed and all of our connections are made, we can now install our fuses. This large 20 amp fuse will power our braking system. This smaller 10 amp fuse will power our stoplight switch for our indicator light. And that completes our look at and installation of the SMI Stay-In-Play DUO supplemental braking system, part number SM99251, in conjunction with the Roadmaster stoplight switch kit, part number RM-751449, on this 2016 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.